welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service.
Today, the topic of my Dharma Talk is this warm and sunny topic of transforming distressing events. Transforming distressing events. And in the book, Heroic Heart, Judsumen Tenzin Palmo says, and I quote, this quote really jumped out at me, so I'm going to share it with you here at the beginning. Tibetan Buddhism emphasizes taking everything onto the path and not discarding anything, even those things we see as big obstacles and problems, which make us think, I would be a better practitioner if only. I would be a better practitioner if only. And sometimes we do think if only, right? Sometimes we think like, well, maybe when work calms down, then I'll really focus on Buddhism. Or maybe when I get this relationship thing figured out or whatever. We sometimes think if only. And that's not limited to Buddhism, of course. We if only a lot of things in our lives and we just wait till later. You know, I think I'll probably finally be able to relax when I retire, right? And I think that way, and that's a dangerous way to think because a lot of people don't get to retire, right? A lot of people, for various reasons, don't get to retire. And that could be me, who knows? So if only can be a dangerous way to think. And we've got to be reminded how fleeting life is. Tomorrow's not promised. So I was thinking about this topic. I was thinking about what I was going to talk about. And I saw a magnet. So we can get wisdom anywhere, right? So I saw a magnet that I want to tell you about. And it was a picture of Frederick Douglass. Do you guys know who Frederick Douglass is? Well, I'm going to tell you anyway. But it was a picture of him with a quote. And the quote really meant a lot to me. He said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. And maybe when we have distressing events, we can sort of use it as part of our practice rather than just being like, oh no. So Frederick Douglass had very distressing events. He was born into slavery in the 1800s. So that's far worse than anything I've experienced. But he was able to transform that. He taught himself how to read and write. He taught himself how to do public speaking. And he made a fake ID and escaped by getting on a train. So great, good for him, right? And he decided to develop himself into someone who could make a difference. So he traveled around speaking and wrote essays and wrote a book even, wrote some books even to just let people know, hey, the stereotypes that are being told about enslaved people are not true. We're people, reminder, we're people, and like we don't like being slaves. Don't let people tell you we like being slaves, because we don't. And he's credited with, though, also, he convinced President Lincoln to allow escaped slaves into the Union Army. And that made a big difference because then slaves all across the South knew, oh, we can escape and go fight for our own freedom. So they started escaping. They were escaping a lot anyway, but they started escaping in droves so they could go help the war effort for this war for their freedom, this war that was about slavery. So that's the story of Frederick Douglass. But now I want to turn to, this is the part of my talk where I overshare about myself. So I want to share with you, I left the Rime Center for a little while. A lot of people don't know that, maybe. I left the Rime Center for a little while, and ultimately, distressing events inspired me to really feel like I needed to come back. And the seed for that was planted in a month I can really remember, March of 2020. I don't know if I have any historians here who know what was going on in March of 2020, but I have a really vivid memory. I was on a work trip in Washington, D.C., and I met a lot of people, but this one guy I met, he didn't want to shake hands. He asked me to elbow bump instead. And I thought, well, that's weird. But then little did I know, of course, I was going to come back, and like a week later, my kids had their their spring break extended for the rest of the year. They didn't go back to school after spring break. They didn't even go back the next year either. And suddenly my job, who always said before, oh, we don't have the technology for people to work from home, they figured it out real quick. Figured it out real quick when the city was shutting down and things. So I'm telling you all that to tell you that I'm not good at uncertainty. I'm not good at uncertainty. And this pandemic, what do we have? Well, we have like, oh my gosh, are millions of people going to die? I don't know. And when's the world going to reopen? I don't know, right? So that uncertainty was a real struggle for me. And Alicia, my wife Alicia, she's my wife now, we got married in 2020. And we wanted to have a big wedding like you do, and we had to pare down. We had like 12 people at our wedding because, well, we didn't know. Uncertainty, right? It's 2020, uncertainty. So, but then the other thing I'm going to share with you that I was dealing with that year was I found out I have this gene that has been identified as connected to a heart condition. And this heart condition is called Brugada syndrome. Don't look it up. But I found out I have this gene. And so I was told, hey, you could have a deadly heart condition. You need to see a cardiologist. So I was like, okay, I'll see a cardiologist. So I made an appointment. And they wait 4 months for that appointment though, right? So, because it takes a long time when you see a good doctor, but two, it was 2020 and they were not taking appointments the same way they normally do. So again, uncertainty, 4 months. And the older I get, the more I realize, like, as we get older, it's not that uncommon for a doctor to tell you, oh, you may have something horrifying. Let's get an appointment to go over the results in like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's not that uncommon, but 4 months is a bit much. But so I'm dealing with all this uncertainty. And because we had a small wedding, though, we had a little bit of extra money to put a better down payment on a house. So this house that we bought, I'm happy to say, has 5 bedrooms, which is the number we needed. But we were able to buy it only because we had a small wedding. So why would I tell you all that, though? Telling you all that because I was very stressed out, and I also had a little bit more free time than usual. And because I'm not going to work, I'm working at home. And one day, I'm just in my bathroom looking out my window, which looks out on the back of the house. I don't want to call it a backyard because it's too hilly to be a yard, but there's a step garden, at the time, I didn't know what it was, but there's a step garden. I think that's what it's called, but it's platform, dirt in it, like stairs. And at that time, it was all covered in leaves and vines, and it just looked awful. I think the owners before us didn't use it. So I had this vision in my head. Oh, I'm going to pull out all these leaves and vines, and I'm going to set up Buddha statues down there. I'm going to make my own sacred space, and it's going to be great. So that's what I did. I spent hours and hours clearing out these leaves and stuff, and I bought some Buddha statues, and I actually was gifted some Buddha statues too. So I set them all up in this garden, and I call it a garden. I don't grow any. I like to say, what's growing there is me. But so I would then start just spending time in this. I've got my own sacred space. I'm going to spend time there. And I'm sharing all that with you to tell you that I started to feel something, to feel like I'm connected with Buddhism, like I'm connected with these statues. And historically, I have been someone who has a more secular view. So I have thought to myself, like, I don't want to hear about karma and rebirth and spirits and all those things. And that shifted from my experience building this garden and spending time in this garden. So where before I used to think, I used to think I don't want to talk about that stuff. And now, like, when I get stressed out at work, I think to myself, oh, should I pray to green Tara to pacify my stress, or should I pray to red Tara to transform it into action? I don't know, but I know I want to pray. So the experience really changed me, but it inspired me. It made me think, oh, I need to I need to have a community. I need to go back to the Rime Center. So when the Rime Center did the reopening, I was there, and I'm happy to be there. I'm glad to be here. But I don't know if I would be if we didn't have a pandemic, because of all those connecting things I went through. It inspired me, and it changed me, and it made me grow. So all of that being said, I'm going to now read to you these 4 verses from the 37 verses on the practice of a bodhisattva. This is called the section on transforming distressing events. And these 4, I wouldn't say they're the same, but I would say they're thematically similar. And I'm going to read all 4, I think, and then comment on those a little bit. So here we go. If someone driven by great desire seizes all my wealth or induces others to do so, to dedicate to him or her my body, possessions, and past, present, and future merit is the practice of a bodhisattva. If in return for not the slightest wrong of mine, someone were to cut off even my very head, through the power of compassion to take all his negative actions upon myself is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if someone says all sorts of derogatory things about me and proclaims them throughout the universe, in return out of loving kindness to extol that person's qualities is the practice of a bodhisattva. And then finally, even if in the midst of a large gathering, someone exposes my hidden faults with insulting language, to bow to him respectfully, regarding him as a spiritual friend, is the practice of a bodhisattva. And at first I thought, why are there 2? Why is there derogatory things and then exposing my hidden faults? And I think that that's actually an important distinction, because in my opinion, that first one is, how should I react when someone says something about me that's not true, that's bad? And the second one is, how should I react when someone says something bad that is true, right? And those are both upsetting, and those are both things we can deal with in certain ways. So I think these verses are aspirational. I don't know if I would forgive someone that was trying to cut off my head. I don't know. I know, or even robbing me. I don't know. So these are something to strive for, and hopefully not something to beat ourselves up over if we're falling apart. In the book, Jetsumon Tenzin Palmo says, just changing our attitude can change everything. We can regard situations that once seemed difficult as being a great spiritual opportunity for us to develop and learn. And I think that's a very powerful way to think about this. But like I said, they're aspirational. They're something to strive for. I think of it as the same as, like, I would like to be able to stub my toe and just be like, oh, pain is entering my body. It will pass soon. But that's not what happens when I stub my toe, right? If I stub my toe, I'm going to curse and probably jump around like a cartoon. So, but aspirational. I would like to be able to say, oh, pain is entering my body. So I will read to you this story from the book real quick, because I think it's an aspirational story, and I think it's very good. And it's this. There's a story of a Zen monk who was quite poor and lived in a hermitage. One day he came back to find that his hut had been broken into and everything had been taken from him. His pots and pans, stores of food, everything. He looked around and then went outside where it was nighttime and the moon was full. He looked at the sky and said, oh, I wish I could have given him the moon. It's a feeling that whatever the thieves took, we want them to take more. We want them to be happy. If they stole, it is because they have negative emotions in their minds, or maybe they have a great need. If they took money, then we can think, I hope he really needs that money. Maybe he needs to educate or feed his children. Hopefully he doesn't just use it on drink and puts it to some good use. I'm happy for him. The money's gone anyway, why worry? Whether or not the money is returned, the point is either we feel upset, angry, and deprived, or we say to ourselves, oh, well, that's cleaned up that karma. And I hope that now he's content because he made a really good haul. Good that I made one sentient being happy today. Can you even imagine, right? So that, again, it's aspirational. So I want to close by sharing with you Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche's 4 Principles of Positive Training. I call him DKR, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. 4 Principles of Positive Training. If someone abuses you, do not abuse in return. If someone gets angry with you, do not get angry in return. If someone exposes your hidden faults, do not expose their hidden faults in return. If someone strikes you, do not strike them in return. So I hope this talk's been helpful. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Brand Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.